Here we go. Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and today I get to have Natasha back. So Natasha, welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
So Natasha, for those who haven't seen our past interview, could you please let everyone know what your full type is?
Yes, so I'm INFP, double masculine, FINE, consume, play, sleep, blast. And I've been recently typed, well, recently, last year actually, as social type number 3.
Okay, sweet. So the focus of our follow-up interview today is your journey working on your double masculine ST blast last, and then we'll also discuss your social type. So why don't we start with your last animal first? Because last time when I also got my social type from Dave and Shan, Dave said to me that a lot of people are making a big deal of the social type, but actually your last animal is still the biggest problem. It's not your social type, it's still your last animal. So people are like, oh, this is the new shiny thing, the social type. Well, it's not your biggest problem, it's still your last animal. So in your case, it's double masculine, so that helped a little bit. But can you share a little bit your experience working on that double masculine ST blast of yours?
So it's interesting because actually I've commented with a lot of people in the community who have a similar path, which is being a blast last teacher.
Right.
And right now, I'm actually working in a very demanding environment. It's a Chinese school. So there are a lot of ST procedures, a lot of ST communication. Like we have to be clear about everything, every step, because we plan all the materials and everything together. So it's been a huge lesson on how to improve the ST. And I feel like because of my experience these last 2 years in the school, I can kind of peacock my ST better. So it's come to a point where I have colleagues of mine because I'm now doing a postgraduate and it's all about teaching. And whenever we have group projects, I take on the ST blast role. So people are like, oh, you're so organized. You know how to follow a structure. You know how to delegate very well the ST tasks. I'm like, well, it's good to know that because that's something I've been working on. But thank you.
Oh, it's good to get that
I even
feedback.
had a classmate say like, "Oh, I'm channeling my inner Natasha and trying to like ST the project." And I was like, "Okay, it's good to know that progress has been made."
Yeah, it's good that you got that ping back from the tribe that you are seen as someone that's good at this ST thing. And then for you, you're like, oh, you don't even know how much work I put into this. Um, now that you're teaching in Macau, right? Um,
Yes.
is that very different when you were in Portugal in terms of what the ST is and in terms of, what the students are like?
Yes, 100%. So in Portugal, I feel like I was stuck in terms of career growth because there was not a lot of room for improvement. I was just stuck in the same kind of classroom setting, getting the same feedback, not really improving my teaching style. And that was a huge shock when I came to Macau and was working with teachers with 20 years of experience in a school setting and getting lots of feedback and learning how to make my instructions clearer, especially for very young learners, because I was used to teaching teenagers and adults, but moving to first and second and third grade is a very big contrast. You have to be really clear with the instructions. Otherwise, the kids will be looking up at me like, I have no idea what you're saying. So that's something I had to work on. And also, the class sizes are much bigger. So classroom management is a big deal. If you don't set the rules clearly and very in an ST way from the beginning, the students don't care anymore. It's chaos. So that's something I've been learning. Well, this year has been easier than last year. Last year was chaos. This year, I'm learning how to manage chaos a lot better. But yeah, also having more consume, so to speak, in university on how to manage the ST better has been helping a lot. So yeah, everything has. I've kind of, I think I kind of disappeared from the community a little bit because I was working so much on all these animals that I kind of like OP took a back seat.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense. Um, so did you say that you are teaching a younger grade now, or is it an older grade? I'm didn't quite catch.
So I was last year I was teaching fifth and sixth. This year I'm teaching second and third grade.
Oh,
But I also teach first grade, like speaking lessons.
I see. That's why it's more chaotic because they're kids. They're young.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, and what subject are you teaching them?
English. I teach English. But I also teach Portuguese as an extracurricular activity.
All right, because Macau is a former colony, so it has the
Yes.
influence of that. Um, okay, cool. So I want to tie this into your social type now. So you are a social type number 3, meaning you have savior specialization, followed by flex, and then friends, and then the last one is generalization slash broad
Yes.
responsibility. Um, the interesting thing about your type is you are blast last, and blast is correlated with specialization. I know there's people in the community that's kind of arguing that it's not blast, it's supposed to be sleep consume. That is a number 3, but I totally disagree because if you look at the animal of sleep and consume, consume is your external self-awareness, how the outside what do you call it, perceives you, while like sleep is like internally, right? Like, so sleep is like you think you're the shit, and then consume is like I want everyone to see me as like, the best, the shit, so it's kind of like that, right? Now in your case, because you do have blast last, but you're a specialist, how is that cognitive dissonance working for you? You have savior consume also, which I think might help you with your managing your class actually, because you have to generalize a little bit. But I want to hear your personal experience with that.
So I do think my social type made it a lot harder to get typed at the beginning. Not get typed, but figure out my type. Because I could see the blast a lot more intensely. It's double masculine, and with the social type 3, it does feel a bit more intense. I do feel like compared to some of my type twins who don't have specialized first, or type cousins who I've talked to, I tend to be a bit more tunnel vision about what I'm doing. And even when talking to colleagues, I'm just like, okay, I got to get this done first. I have to finish everything that I need to do first, and then I can move on to the next thing. So I'm very much like tunnel vision on my work. I also don't enjoy when people present me with things that are outside of my duties. So if someone tells me, now you got to give kids to sing a song, and I'm like, I never trained kids to sing a song. What are you expecting of me? That's not my responsibilities.
Right.
I always get that kind of freak out. Whereas I see people who have savior responsibility, they're just like, okay, I'll go with the flow and do this and that and that. I'm like, how? I can't. I'm like, I gotta do this. And when people tell me I have to do things outside of my responsibility, I'm just like, feel kind of lost and flustered and almost tantrum like. I end up doing it mostly because I have play savior, so I can kind of adapt easily to circumstances.
Right.
But I don't enjoy it. I'd rather like someone tell me like this person who is specialized in this will do take care of this, and you can take care of what you're specialized in. That's where I feel more comfortable in. But over the years, also living with someone who's more ST and noticing that I am disregarding responsibility in many aspects of my life, namely like chores, cleaning the house, health, hygiene, all that. I noticed I had to start taking care of those things as well in my life, or I would like even the things that I'm responsible for, my specialization would not go well. So kind of had to work on the responsibility part. But I still feel like, in terms of what I'm capable of doing, I still prefer narrowing in on my specialization rather than branching off into different things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's good that you're learning to take the broader responsibility also for the other parts of your life because it's important. And I feel like in life, um, we all have to do that fourth social type that we don't want to do. It's like just part of the deal. And you don't have to do all of it. It's like 80-20 rule. So just 20% of it, just enough to get by, but you don't have
Yeah.
to be amazing at it. Like I can totally relate to what you said because right now I'm doing a lot of specialization work and I hate it. And then I'm thinking, but I'm like, you know what? But it's good because like I can empathize with you guys, the number three. So I can be like, oh, I see where you're complaining when someone's dragging you to do something else because it takes so much focus to do that specialization work, and when someone pulls you out of it, it kind of ruins the flow of things also, right? Um,
Yeah.
and you do have to give up doing a lot of other responsibility to make that specialization thing work. It is really annoying, and it's like a godsend when someone comes and helps you out with like the other stuff, because then you feel like,
Yes.
"Oh, I have the safe space to just focus on this one thing, and I know the rest is taken care of." So So I can see it now that I'm doing specialization stuff. So I think it's good that like all the social types kind of like do a little bit of each other stuff so that you can build empathy for each other and you be like, okay, no, I see where you're coming from. So if it's like a two with a three, the two will like leave the three alone, or like when the two is flustered, the three can be like, oh, I can see how you're flustered, like juggling all this stuff. So it's like empathy, right?
For sure,
In the day. Uh,
definitely.
the other thing about you that's also your animal stack is complete cognitive dissonance compared to your social stack because you have demon friends but you're play savior. So can you share a little bit about that also, because that's also another funny thing about your social
So
stack.
actually, it's ironic because I'm at an IP with demon friends, but with play savior. So it's like kind of dissonant in both
Right.
aspects. But
Yeah, it's a
I
dissonance
would,
on top of dissonance on top of dissonance.
yes, I'd say like where I noticed the demon friends, it's more like sometimes it could be hard to distinguish between being an IP and being demon friends. So one common thing I felt growing up, and at times I still kind of feel, is like when I see people just bonding so naturally, and I'm like, it takes so much effort for me to sometimes feel like I can bond with people in an effortless way. So for me, it takes effort to sound effortless. But for other people, it just seems so natural. That's like almost, I don't know if it's an IP thing or if it's a demon friends thing. But the other side is that I find it very hard to befriend people if there is at least no common ground. Like if there is no common interest or no common memory, shared experience, no, if there's no common ground whatsoever, it's like, what is my reason to engage with this person? Like, I have no reason to do so. And if I try to, I just feel like an observer. I don't feel like I can properly engage because there's just no common ground. So that's, I think, where the demon friends comes in. I don't necessarily feel the need to engage with everyone. For example, in my workspace, for me, it's important to get the job done. And if my colleagues are cool, even better. But if not, at least if I enjoy the work, that's the most important part. So
Right.
I think that that's one thing that Michael told me when he typed me social type 3 is that the vibe of the work doesn't seem to affect whether I stay at work or not. Because my work environment last year, when my colleagues was like, it's super toxic and stuff like that, I was like, doesn't really particularly bother me. Like toxic workplaces exist everywhere, but I like the work I'm doing here, so kind of like that.
That's funny. Yeah, I guess if you're not engaging with a tribe, then it can't be toxic because you're not even involved, right? You know.
I mean, engage, but in a way that for me, I see like all different workplaces as having potential for being toxic in some way.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is, which type of work would I mind the least doing? So do I like doing this work over this work? Then this work environment for me would be better because as a decider, I'll see any workplace as potentially toxic depending on the people there. I see like you have cool people and less cool people in every place. And this is a very decider perspective, but that's how I see it. So I don't really particularly think that the vibe of the workplace is a determining factor about whether I want to stay at a job or not.
I feel like toxic workplace usually comes down to personality clash. Like when you have a bunch of people that's like
Definitely.
completely different personality and not no common ground whatsoever and different motives, and especially if you have a lot of like number ones who has like, the ulterior motive to use politics to get ahead, and step on people. No offense to number ones, but you guys are doing it for sure. I've seen it so
Yes.
many times in my work history. So, um, but it's good that you are focusing on the work as opposed to the relationships at your workplace. With that being said, though, you still have TE at the bottom, and TE is connecting with people through work. So, how does that work for you? No pun intended, you know?
Well, it's tough because I do have masculine TE and I have MT play second. So I find that, for example, compared to my husband, who is TI, he's SETI, consumes sleep play blast. That's something we didn't mention in the last interview. I think I told you I thought he was a decider, ESTJ. He's actually a double feminine ESTP. So he is way less into collaboration than I am. I don't mind collaborating with my classmates, my colleagues, especially because the school I work at, we actually do something called co-teaching. So two teachers in the same classroom teaching a class, and co-planning. So all the teachers together have to co-create the material for the grade. So there's a lot of TE, a lot of TE. And where I've noticed my demon TE sometimes coming out is when they, for example, for answer keys of exams and tests, an answer in like English, be checking the grammar and stuff, might be correct. But because we didn't teach the students that way, we will not mark it as correct. And my TE is like, but it's correct. And I'm like, okay, but because we have to work all together and everyone has to agree on it, and I disagree with them, but I'm like, because the higher ups decided on this, I have to agree. But in my mind, I'm like, I disagree. And that's where my demon TE might sometimes come out. But because I am placed second, I still kind of have this urge to collaborate and ask people questions to learn and all that. So it goes both ways. It's not as bad, I guess, if I were a consume, sleep, play, blast INFP, but it still does come out in small ways, especially when I try to argue with some of the teachers, like for a specific answer, and even show grammar and stuff like that to point out like this is correct, and they're like no, and I'm like, that's when it comes out. But mostly in those situations.
I see. I see. Um, that's definitely a good point though, that you have TE and not TI. So the collaboration thing is still okay, even though you're number three.
Yeah.
Because of that specific function. So the animals and functions still influences your social type a lot. In
Yes.
some way. With that being said, because you don't have FE, what about like the actual social bonding time? Like, do you try to avoid that because it's like not in your FI, or how do you approach that personally?
So that's where I feel the same way as my husband's, like when there's this shared values thing, like we all must feel this way, or company ethos, that kind of stuff. I cringe with all of that. I hate it. That's the kind of thing I really don't like. And for example, my school, I won't really give specific details, but they do have a specific ethos to it. And whenever that is brought up, I just like pretend to not have an opinion on it. I just don't want to acknowledge, because that's like a can of worms I don't want to touch, because just to protect my own like stand in the school. I don't want to like uh let's say sabotage that position. So I just don't open that can of worms. But it's something that I personally don't really like.
Yeah, I can relate because I'm also in the same quadrant as you. So when you said all
Yeah.
this, I'm like, yeah, I definitely would cringe also. And I've been in that situation also where people are doing the FE stuff, like we're in this together, blah blah, all this nonsense. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, shut up. This is so cringe, you know?
Yes.
You know? Um, okay. Or like sometimes I would think, keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear it. Um,
Yeah.
but then you could also imagine the TIs, when the TEs are telling them to work, they would be like, no, keep it to yourself also. So
Yeah. They don't like when people try to give them suggestions. They're like, no, let me do it myself. Even if my way is stupid, let me do it myself. Let me figure it out by myself. Whereas, so I kind of get it. But at the same time, I'm fortunate that my workplace is definitely more TE than FE. So I guess that's also why I don't mind the toxic environment, because there's not so much FE. There's a lot more TE
oh,
involved
I
with.
see. That's funny. So maybe the people that think it's a toxic environment are people with FE, because the people with TE is like, what's the problem? Like,
Possibly, maybe.
yeah, because I can see that for sure. Like in one of my previous job, it was very FE dominant. So I was completely out of place because I have TE. So like I didn't last there long at all. And so it does make sense, like when you go to a work environment, that if it's TE dominant, then it's good for the TE FI access people, and then vice versa with like the TI FE people. They work well in that other environment. I'm not saying they can't work together, but it's kind of, there is definitely that what do you call it, clash when
Yes, for sure.
come together from that purpose. Um, Now I do want to ask you something about your demon friends. You have it third, so it's not missing. So you said that connecting with people, especially if you don't have any common ground, is difficult, or starting a new friendship or whatnot. But what about the existing ones? Do you feel like you can maintain the existing ones, no problem, especially because you've already had those established connections?
Yes, 100%. Because I still am Savior NF. So I still care about connections and bonds. And if they are in my FI, I probably want to maintain that friendship unless I start noticing patterns. And I have to say noticing patterns because I need to see it many, many times before I actually acknowledge the pattern with double feminine NF. So I have to see a reoccurrence of a pattern of toxicity before I'm willing to like cut that FI tie. Because it's very hard, especially with double feminine NF, to spot that. I will sometimes see it and be like, this is kind of toxic. Forget it. And then after a few weeks again, like, this is kind of toxic, and then forget it. And then after a few months, maybe I'll see it again, and I keep ignoring it until maybe someone else points it out to me, and then I start thinking about it because now it's ST. Someone pointed it out to me.
Right.
And then I keep thinking about it, and maybe sometimes I might, okay, in an FI way, ghost them. But it's not the best way. But this, I would say it happened more when I was younger. These days, I feel like most friendships that end up not panning out, it's mostly because people just kind of grow apart. There's no specific moment when the friendship ends. It's just like we live in different places. We grew up with different people. We have zero shared memories anymore since like 10 years ago. So there's not really anything that ties us together. But I also have friends who I've had since kindergarten and like still meet up for lunch with them if they're in Macau. I meet up with them for lunch like every other week or every 3-4 weeks because now we're all quite busy. Or if they ever visit, we hang out. So it doesn't feel very different because we are still very close friends. So in that regard, I would say like the demon friends aspect maybe is countered by the savior NF and being FI first.
I think you're the first person that I've interviewed that's a social type 3 that regularly connects with their friends on a regular basis. Because I've always suspected that not all number 3s have those weird friendships. Like I've interviewed some number 3s in the past where they only see their friends like once or twice a year, which is okay, nothing wrong with that. Or they might only have like one friend, you know. But from my experience, because I do have a lot of friends that are 3s, because 2s and 3s tend to get along and they also hate each other. It's like a love-hate relationship kind of deal. Um, so like the people that I like the most are number 3s, but they also cause me the most grief, and probably vice versa. So I do notice that number 3s, for existing friends, they do put an effort to maintain those, but making new ones is definitely like super hard compared to like, a 2 or 4.
I think so. I'd say like the difference is I live in a very small environment. Macau is a very small city. So if I have a friend and then they organize a dinner and invite their friends, and then I end up meeting their friends, and if we get along, if we have common ground, then they become my friends too. And that's how kind of I've made friends as an adult here in Macau. It's either that or people I met at work who I have common ground with as well, or people at university who I have common ground with as well. So I don't think it's that hard necessarily to make friends as long as there's common ground. But friendships that I do have and that I don't see as toxic, those ones for me are like friends for life.
That's also good because you're an IP. So, you obviously want to connect
Yeah,
with the tribe. So that's like a big bonus for you. Um,
for sure.
how is your fear or pain, I guess, from tribe hate these days? Is it not so bad as before, or is it ever present?
Not as bad, I'd say. It's occasionally I'll have moments where maybe because I'm stressed out, maybe because there's just too much going on and it's harder for me to control my FI as well. I might start having those demon tribe insecurities that I used to have much more when I was younger. I feel like they were more prevalent when I was in my teen years or in my early 20s than they are now. Um, I still occasionally am afraid, not afraid, but I get like that, those palpitations in my chest whenever I ask for feedback on something that I've been working on. And I'm like, oh, I, I always get that, especially constructive criticism can sometimes be very emotionally unsettling, but it's not as bad. Like before, I would avoid feedback at all cost. Now I go for it, but I know that when I get it, I might get shaken up a little bit. It's not as scary, but it still affects me in a like emotionally in some way, if that makes sense.
Sometimes I wonder if that's social type, or sorry, not social type, but I sometimes I wonder if that's like an IPEJ thing, like a decider thing, or if that's like a female thing, you know? Because I
I'd
noticed with
say it's more of an IP thing because, like, I'd say actually DI above DE thing because I notice even my husband was an observer and has double activated DI in the saviors.
yeah.
He sometimes also has that disconnection from the tribe is like, I don't know how the tribe perceives me. And because there's that blind spot, getting anything from the tribe can sometimes be intimidating. He gets a bit less intimidated than I do because he's an observer, but I still notice him talking more about that feeling of intimidation.
I was just looking back at, my friends and family members, and in regards to feedback. So I have two sisters, they went to nursing school, and every time they would get a feedback, so one of my sister is an ENFP, consume, sleep, play, blast, and the other one's an ENFJ, blast, sleep, play, consume. So whenever they would get a feedback, they would really take it to heart. Like it would really like rattle them, and even one of them who is an observer would kind of get rattled by it, right? And then my
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend, who is an INTJ jumper, she would also get rattled sometimes from feedbacks. So that's why I was wondering, is this a female thing? Because like my sister, the ENFJ, her boyfriend at the time when she was going to school was an ISTP. Obviously EJs and IPs tend to date, right? So, and then her boyfriend, when he would get feedback, he would just be like, eh, don't care, So it's like and then for me, sometimes I get a feedback and it's like a bad feedback. I'm like, eh, it seems like it's like a guy thing. It's like just don't really care about like the feedback as much.
I'm not sure if I agree because I had a colleague at work
Yeah.
and he was dead scared of asking for feedback. Like I would go after it, he would not ask. He just didn't want. And then when someone would give him negative feedback, he almost wanted to quit the job.
If you
So I
decide,
do see that still. And I see that also in other people who get negative feedback, guys who get negative feedback. But the difference is maybe I might show sadness, they might show anger, like, fuck this person for giving me
oh, I
this
see.
feedback. So, but I'll see this as well. But I notice I don't think it's necessarily a boy or a girl thing. I think it also has to do with if that is something that is important to you or not. If I get feedback on something that is not important to me, I'll be like, who cares? But if it's some feedback on my career or something that I worked hard on, then yes, that will affect me much more. And I see that also with the guys who I interact with. They will only react to feedback negatively if it is something that matters to them. If it doesn't matter to them, they'll just be like, who cares? Like, but
So
that's how I perceive it too.
so for you, if it doesn't matter for you, it would still affect you or no?
No, not really. Like if someone were to tell me like, you suck at running, I'm like, yeah, I know. Thank you. Thank you for telling me something I already know.
Oh, I see. I see. So if it's not in your FI values, you don't really care.
Yeah. If it's not my specialization or my FI values, I'm like, cool for spotting something that I already noticed. Yay.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so I guess you would be sarcastic in your reply to that person because you're still a decider. You wouldn't be like making fun of yourself.
I would I would try doing both actually, but mostly I'd be sarcastic. I guess that use when I was younger, I was way more sarcastic. It's kind of dialed down a little bit over years. But if someone were to make a comment trying to bring me down, but about something that I don't care about, I would probably be sarcastic about it. Yeah, probably.
So would you ever say any self-deprecating jokes about yourself or no?
Um, I think I've said mostly in a negative state, not in a positive state. I'm still a decider after all.
Right.
But I feel like being a teacher and interacting with little kids has helped me not take anything too seriously because you have little kids telling you all kinds of insults all the
Right.
time. So if you take it to heart every time a student tells you something that is criticizing you, then you're gonna have a hard time as a teacher.
Right. Right. I guess that's a good thing that you decided to become a teacher because then you have more practice dealing with the tribe,
Yeah,
Although
for
they're young,
sure.
although they're younger, which kind of makes sense because you're an IP, so your T at the bottom is, um, not as mature as your NE, for example, or your
Yeah.
FI. Yeah. Um, I do want to ask you about your savior ego and flex. Where does that come out for you? So that's an interesting one because I've, had you in the interviews several times already in the past, and I haven't really seen you flex that much. Like you don't seem to be like a flexy kind of person. But where does a flex come out for you?
So I actually told this to someone. One of my friends described me as a humble bragger.
Okay,
So
let's
I
hear it.
will not be outright about it, but I will casually mention some of my achievements in stories without like making a big deal out of them. So one example I have is like when I was in high school, I had a teacher who told me that in 10 years she hadn't given 100% in a history test. And I was like, okay. And she said, my students last year, they got like 19s and 20s, which is about 95, 100% in our system. And this year they went down to 70%. So I'm hoping that you next year can keep up the trend of the 95 and 100% and have my first 100 in 10 years. And I was like, that's a lot of expectations, but okay. I'll probably not manage, but sure. And then one test, I studied like, I think 20 hours. And then my classmates were like, oh, let's postpone the test. And I didn't want to because I had this kind of superstition that if we postponed it, I would slack off and get a bad grade on my test. But we managed to postpone the test, and I was so pissed off at my classmates that day, very demon TE, that I decided, okay, I'm not going to slack off. I'm going to keep studying. And I studied for another like 10 hours or so, basically just to the point where I knew everything back and forth. You could ask me, and I already knew the specific line, the specific page, everything. And so then I went to the test and I got 100% on that test. And when I tell people this story, people are like, you're bragging about this. And that's how I feel. It's like it's a humble brag. I'm not necessarily like, I don't want to shove in people's faces, but I feel like other people listening to that might come across as bragging. And I also like when I am recognized for the things that I do. So if someone tells me, like, oh, you helped this kid win a recitation contest, I'll feel happy about it. I won't necessarily shove in people's faces about it, but I will be like, yeah, I helped my students win first place or something like that. That's going to be my like humble brag.
Oh, I see. I guess your brag's not coming from the FI, it's coming from the TE, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
more the specialist brag.
yeah. Oh, that's interesting for sure. Um, I think because your flex and ego is second, it's not first. It's not as overboard as the number ones. It's still,
Yes,
in a way, you could say it's like kind of like double decider, double observing, but for like the social type. So it's kind of still like okay, like the
yeah,
number twos have it third, right? So Dave calls it
yes,
the chill, the chill brag, you know. So yours is the humble brag. So number three is the chill brag, you know. It's like
yeah,
you drop it and you get out before it becomes cringe, right? Because if you brag too much,
yes.
it becomes cringe, right? Like there's like a sweet spot, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like name dropping, but you drop your achievements once in a while. You sprinkle a little bit, but you try not to overdo it because you don't want to come across as too like I don't know. Also, in Asian culture, I feel like we have to be a bit more modest.
Yeah,
So if we're showing off too much, we can come off as like very show offish. I don't know. That's how I see it. Also, my IP side, like I don't want to come off as a too show offish. I don't want people to notice me that much. Um, but I still want to be recognized for my achievements. And another thing I noticed is that I think David Shine mentioned about like appearance and stuff.
yeah.
When my husband and I go out, sometimes he's like, what are you gonna wear? And I'm like, I'm just gonna wear something casual. And then I put the clothes on the bed and he's like, that's not casual. I'm like, it is. It's just like I like to look nice.
Yeah.
So that's like also the flex side. Like, yes, I will sometimes go out not wearing the best clothes. Like if I'm just gonna get some groceries or something. But if I'm going out for dinner with friends, then I want to look at least okay. And to be okay in my FI way is like I have to look at least nice. So
Right.
I think that's also where the flex comes in.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing because the number twos and fours they don't do that enough, you know. They're too bummish, which is terrible, you know. It's like
Yeah. And
horrible.
just one example, just before this interview, I was just wearing pajamas and I'm like, okay, time for the interview. Let's go and find some top. Let's comb the hair. Let's like look somewhat presentable. Let's find an angle in the house that looks somewhat presentable. Like that's how the flex comes out. Like I don't want to show my worst side.
That's funny. And then I interviewed a number four. They're like, they just got out of bed. They're like, oh, hey. One time I had an interview. I was interviewing this ISFP guy. He double masculine, and like when I called him to do the Zoom call, he was literally in bed. Like it was pitch black, and I can barely see his face, and he's sleeping. He's sleeping while he's talking to me. And I
Oh
tried
my God.
not to laugh because it was so funny. Because like you could only see like the outline of his face in the pitch black, and I'm like, this is so weird, but it's kind of funny. So I'm gonna keep gonna roll with this. But the guy is definitely a number four. So number fours you just don't care, right? So um
Yeah, I do see that. I think my brother might be a number four or a number two because he doesn't really care in particular in comparison with me. My husband also, I don't think he is a four or a two because he does care about how he appears. He goes to work with like a button-up shirt and stuff.
oh,
Even I'm a bit more casual than he is.
do you think your husband's also a three then?
Be a three. He might. I'm not sure if he's a one or a three. I'm actually not sure.
It's so interesting to see those evidence that someone could be savior flex based on how they dress, because I have a psychologist that I used to see. He stopped his practice just this year, but I noticed when I used to see him in the office, he's like this British guy, and he was always dressed so nice. Like everything was thought about. Like he's an INFJ. I think he's blast play consume sleep, definitely sleep blast. And like his socks would match the color of his pants, and he's always wearing nice shoes, groom his hair, also wore like a blazer or some kind of nice top. And during our psychology sessions, you know, I would tell him that I take responsibility for everything in my life. And sometimes it's kind of funny that he would give me his advice based on his own projection as a number three. And he said, you're not responsible for any of these, and I'm like, and that was before I knew what social type. Now that I know about social type, I'm like, oh, he's a three. He's trying to project to me that those are not your responsibility because he's a three. As a three, you specialize your thing, right? Um,
Yeah.
but because I know he's also a three, I there was a fly. So I when he quit his practice, I sent him a really nice email to pump up his ego. I said, you
Yeah.
know what, you're underrated as a psychologist. That's what I said to him. Like people missed out on not having you as their psychologist, and he was so happy. So I was like, there we go. There's the ego. But he was
Yes.
really good though. I think the specialists are good at their job. So it's not like it's fake. It is true. Like you guys are good at your stuff. Like it's not like the number twos, right? They overpromise. And because they overpromise, they don't do it, especially if they're blast last. And a lot of number twos are blast last, right? Or when they do it, it's sloppy because they're like, shoot, I promised this person I'm gonna do this. Let me put something last minute, and then it's like crap, right? So it's almost better not to like promise people anything because like it's gonna be bad. So I totally get it from the specialist standpoint. Where like, yeah, limit your promise because when you do deliver, then it's gonna be good. You know.
Yeah. I actually do tell that to people like when people ask me to do something that's outside my specialization, I even tell them like, sure, I can do it, but I can't promise it's gonna be good because I don't usually do this. So if you want me to do it, I will do it. I just can't promise it's gonna be good. I'll tell them like up front because I'm like, this is not my responsibility, but if you really want me to do it, I will do it. Just don't have any expectations of it. Because if you have expectations, they're gonna be like they're gonna crash.
Right, right. No, that's a good one actually. I never thought about that. So I think next time this situation occurs, I'm gonna borrow what you just said, and I'll just tell them, I won't say it exactly the way you said it, but I'll just say I'm overworked because it's true. I'm number two, and I'll be like, I can help you, but it's gonna be bad. Are you sure you want my help?
Yeah.
Like that's, and then at that point they'll be like, maybe not, right? So it's like, okay, good. It's like an out almost. But it's
Sadly, people will not say no. Sadly, some people will still want it even if it's not good.
Well, I don't see it as a bad thing per se, because like if I can see the person really wants me to help them, even if it's gonna be bad, then I just see it as like a bonding opportunity.
True.
So sometimes it's not about the work, sometimes it's about the connection that you make with a person, right? So
That's a save your friends thing.
yeah, yeah, it is. But I take my friendship seriously because like when you retire at some point, what do you do after retirement? Well, you probably gonna hang out with people, and if you don't have anybody, then your life after retirement sucks. And I think a lot of number threes and number ones get stuck in this, or like they get to retirement. I know number ones probably won't retire, But like, number threes definitely would retire though. Um, they have
Yes,
nothing
we do value our work-life balance.
exactly. So do you want to go to the finish line and you have like nobody? Like the bigger the social group is, the better when you're retired, because when you retire, you become a kid again, pretty much, right? So
That's true, but I think the way I see it is that yes, work is one component, but just like I said, number three is value the work-life balance because at least I guess because I'm OE, I still have interests outside of work. I just have very niche interests, so it's still very specialized. Like I might be into OPS, but if you show me other personality systems, I'm like, no, discard, discard. I only care about OPS. I don't need any more like OE systems. Don't care. And then like TV shows, I'll only watch one genre. That's it. I don't watch any other genre. I have no time for that. That's my niche. So that's kind of how I notice my specialization, my interests. So even with like outside of work, I still have some things I enjoy doing. Traveling is one thing I enjoy doing, and I always take time when I'm not working to travel. And with my friends, like it's still an FI thing. I'll still care about them. So yeah, it doesn't matter. But I still like if a friend comes to me and says, "Can you do this thing that I know you have no idea how to do to help me?" And I'm like, I could try, but I can't promise anything. It's probably going to be crap. Are you still sure you want me to do it?
no, I really like that line. I'm gonna start using that. That's so good. I love that. I love that line so much. Um, I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna use the Natacha method. That's Um, so I'm curious. So you mentioned that you're not interested in any other personality typing system. Have you looked into the other system and you know that, and then you notice they don't resonate or they don't really make sense, or is it that you only saw OPS and then you kind of just locked into OPS?
So this is going to sound ironic considering my type, but I find all the other systems to NF. Ooh,
Yeah, you
it's
know
too
what?
NF. It's like I feel like it's too abstract for me to grasp. It kind of feels like, but I can see everyone doing this kind of thing. It feels too NF for me, and it's ironic considering I'm Savior NF. I should like these systems, but no, it doesn't really. I tried and looked into it, but it's it feels too NF for me to grasp.
I think if someone with double activated NF says that, it must be bad, because
Necessarily, I think it's also because of my social type being very like my tendency is to narrow in. Like even though I'm OE, I have a lot of different interests, but within my interests, my tendency is to narrow in into one like sub part of that system. So sub part of that interest. So one genre of TV shows, one system and personality systems, what even one gadget in terms of technology. I'm very like narrowed in terms of one interest only.
oh, I see.
It gets really hard even for friends to tell me like recommend a TV show, and I'm like, that's not in my interest, not interested. So that's kind of, it's like FI, then masculine SI combined with social type 3. All of it together forms this like very like tunnel vision in interests.
I think because you also have SF sleep, so when it comes to TV
Yeah.
shows, it's very particular, right? It's not
Yes.
those with SF consume that was consume everything, you know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, which I totally relate because my girlfriend is double activated SF consume, right? And she'll consume so much different stuff. I'm like, I don't want to watch. I don't want to watch any new. I don't want to watch that TV show. I think it's a waste of time to watch so many TV shows to begin with, right? So totally get it. The genre thing makes sense too. I tend to maybe that's more of a Delta Quadrant thing then.
Maybe, yeah.
Like the NF consume wants to consume something that's more like you know out there as opposed to something that's like SF, right? Um, and if we're gonna consume something SF, then it has to be inside our SF box already. Otherwise, we don't want to touch it.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I can relate to you about the other typing systems also because I'm double activated NT and I'm like that doesn't make any sense. This sounds like you pulled it out of your butt or it sounds like it's just like horoscope.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what is this stuff like magicians and trickster? What is all this nonsense? Shut up, that's what I was thinking. That's what I always think, right? Like this is nonsense BS. Or you're using big words to describe something. If you have to use big words to describe something, it's probably not that useful. If you can't say it in plain terms, it's not as good as it could be. I understand your big words, but it doesn't. Are you trying to make yourself sound smart? Because you're not. You sound like obnoxious, if anything. Um,
Yeah,
um, yeah. With that being said, I do believe in the enneagram. So I know people think it's BS, but I think enneagram is legit.
I tried to get into it, but it feels too NF. And maybe because I've already just like zeroed in into OP, I'd not like to open to other systems, but who knows in the future? Right now, I feel like I have too much going on with work and with uni that even my interests are like only reserved for my free time. So,
I think the
yeah,
reason
I
why
understand.
I feel like the enneagram is legit is because when I took psychology when I was in college, I remember the professor was showing a chart on the screen of the breakdown of your personality type, and then they had like a pie chart. So they said one third was Myers-Briggs pretty much, and then another one third is your relationship. One third is your environment, which makes sense, because the environment does shape your personality, and then the last one third was your relationship with your parents growing up. And then what I know about the enneagram is your personality is shaped by your relationship with your parents growing up. That's actually how you get type, based on the
Okay.
combination of your parents, right? If you have one dominant parent and one passive parent, then you become this, right? Based on your interaction. And so I thought it was really cool. And it's also like they have like the push and pull kind of like coins with like OPS, like OPS, it's like tribe above self above tribe, organized gather, right? So Enneagram also
Mm-hmm.
have those, um, in their own. They call it like point of disintegration and point of growth. So it's kind of like the two opposites. So I like that they have those aspect. It's also very practical too. So I thought Enneagram's legit. I'm not here to convince you. I'm just kind of giving you my opinion on on
Yes.
on
No, I think it is. It has some interesting things going for it, but maybe someday, if I have like when I have some time for it. Right now, as you've noticed, we're specialists rather than generalists. We're like more narrowed in, and the more things I have going on, the harder for me it is to branch off into a new interest. But maybe someday. I mean, I've already had many people talking to me about Enneagram in the community and stuff, so might explore it someday if I have time. Right now, like I mentioned, I later on have to go to university because I'm doing a post grad, and that's taking up most of my free time. So maybe
yeah.
after that.
It makes sense. Enneagram has a lot of woo woo stuff too. I don't like it. Like the people that talks about the woo woo stuff, I just want to like kick them in the face. Like that's my masculine SI there. Like
Yeah.
I'm like just stop, just stop. But anyways, with that being said, OPS is still the best system. So, um,
Yes, it is.
it's like the most practical in my opinion. So there's no point. Um, anyway, so Natasha,
100%.
um, we'll wrap it up here because you have to go soon. So, um,
Yes. Thank you so much.
and sharing more about your journey working on your last animal, and also more about your social type, and also your social type from your perspective. I don't think I've interviewed any number threes Delta quadrant, so it's kind of interesting to get your point of view on this.
Interesting. Yeah, I hope you encounter more so I can also see other people's and other Delta Quadrant's perspectives to number threes.
Yeah, for sure. Oh no, wait, I did actually. Never mind. Shannon. Never mind, I forgot.
Oh,
She's an ENFP. Never mind. I forgot about that interview. But anyways, yeah, we'll wrap it up here. So take care, okay?
okay. See you.